Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandham at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.
It's time for another Football by Numbers bonus edition of the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, and we have author and historian Rich Shmelter to help us with jersey number 50. It's all coming up with Rich in just a moment. This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. This is your host, Darren Hayes, and we're podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So with Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff supplying us with the dunes, let's go no huddle through today's football history headlines and birthdays of Hall of Famers.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com, and welcome back to the Pigpen. We tonight have another bonus edition of our Football by Numbers series. We have jersey number 50, and we have a lot of people to talk about on there. But I've got some help tonight. I've got an author that's wrote a lot about football, Rich Shmelter. He is a PFRA member and has helped with the PFRA on projects like the 1966 Green Bay Packers, the 58 Colts, the 51 LA Rams. He's also wrote some books on his own, USC Trojans Football Encyclopedia, the Raiders Encyclopedia. He's even wrote books in basketball, the LA Lakers Encyclopedia, LA Dodgers Encyclopedia. And I'm going to throw a little curveball here because he's thrown at us, and we're going to ask him this in a second. The Browns, the Cleveland's team. He wrote that book too. So let's bring him in and let's ask him some questions. Rich Shmelter, welcome to the Pigpen.
Thank you, Darren. I'm looking forward to jumping right into that Pigpen with you.
You're going to get a little muddy in here. You know, be ready to get some dirty.
Great. Sounds great.
Because we roll around the mud a little bit.
Old school football.
That's right. That's right. So tell us a little bit about this writing. You have a lot of things from the West Coast, and then all of a sudden the Cleveland Browns pops up in there.
The Cleveland Browns was the first book that I wrote. When the Browns left town and then they were ready to come back, I thought, hey, let's take a shot, because I've always wanted to write a book. So I said, let's take a shot. So I told my family I'm going to do this. And I sent out some queries. Before you know it, people were actually interested. It's like, okay, great. Now I got to write it. So it's just a book about the greatest moments of Cleveland Browns history from 1946 through 1999, when they were coming back to town. And had a great time with it. And it got me started, got my chops going on it. And then I wrote a book about a gangster in Chicago history called Machine Gun Jack McGurn, called Chicago Assassin. And then after that, then it steamrolled with the encyclopedias that I always wanted to do. Of course, the Raiders highlights the first 50 years of the team's history. The Lakers also 50 years, Dodgers the first 60 years in Los Angeles, and then the Trojans 125 years. So everything had an anniversary tied to it. So loved every minute of it. And working with the PFRA, just fantastic organization, and had a great time working on those also.
Wow, great. Now, where does your interest in football history come from?
Dates back to I had a sixth grade teacher named Mr. Rich in Maple Heights, where I went to school, and he really brought me out of my shell when it came to sports, because I really wasn't interested in sports, and he made it so passionate that all of a sudden I started to take an interest in it. And at first I was fascinated with Joe Namath of the Jets, when they won the Super Bowl that year, and just thought he was the coolest until I saw Ken Stabler. And all of a sudden I was hooked with the Raiders, and it was a love affair ever since on that. And that's how it all got started. So I'd say pretty much my interest started with the merger. The real interest started with the merger in 1970 when I was a little boy.
Well, that's truly an interesting time.
I hate to date myself, but I was a little kid.
I'm right there with you. So don't worry.
Okay, thanks.
But those are two great icons to get interesting. Joe Namath and Kenny Stabler. I thought you were going to tell me you lost interest in Joe Namath when he put the pantyhose on, but that's a whole different story. We won't go into that.
Oh, no. He also did that commercial with Farrah Fawcett, so you can't beat him there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely. Those are some very high profile and very well outspoken football players, for quarterbacks. You didn't have a lot of them back then, but those two were definitely, they spoke their mind and were in the media all the time. That's for sure.
Compliments of Bear Bryant. That's right. That's both a connection from Alabama. You're right. Didn't even think of that. We have a really tough journey here tonight because we have the number 50 tonight. I hope you're up for the challenge because we're going to go through here and try to come up with the most significant players in NFL history. We have 101 years to choose from, and we're going to try to find the 10 best between you and I. We're going to have to agree on this. So, we can have some arm wrestling and some jostling back and forth and jockeying to get our players in there. But we want to try to come between us mutually the top 10 best number 50s in the NFL. You up for that challenge tonight? I sure am. Let's get dirty, Darren.
Okay. All right. Well, normally when we start, we have a little bit of a head start here because the Pro Football Hall of Fame has given us 6 individuals that wore the number 50 during their careers, and they're in Canton, Ohio. And they are Mike Singletary, Alex Wojciechowicz, Jim Otto, Steve Owen, Len Ford, and Ken Strong are all in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, I'm going to mention that Jim Otto and Steve Owen only wore the number 50 for 1 year. Len Ford wore it for 2 years, while Ken Strong, 15, Mike Singletary, 12 seasons, and Alex Wojciechowicz, 6 seasons. So just doesn't mean that we don't choose them on there, but just to give us some perspective as far as the number 50 goes.
Sounds good.
Do you want to start with any of those?
I'd love it. I would love it. I think you almost have to go number 1, even though I'm a Raiders guy. We'll get to that later.
Okay.
But I would say Mike Singletary, old Samurai Mike.
Oh, definitely.
He was nobody studied harder, worked harder. He had a true passion for the game. He was a great inspiration, giving speeches, intense eyes. He had it all, and he was such an overachiever. I mean, here's a guy that came out of Baylor, 6 foot, 230 pounds. He lacked speed, so they said, and he just worked and worked and worked at it. And he had to come out of games on third down situations. So he spent hours and hours of practice working on coverage techniques, and allowed him to become a complete player. He studied films. He was built like a fire plug. He had a powerful upper body, and he was in constant motion on the field, totally focused. Just an incredible run stopper, and he throws body into action anywhere, almost like a Troy Polamalu, type.
Right.
And he led that Bears defense in 1985 to an NFL low 2.3 points a game allowed, and to an 18-1 record. You have to put Mike Singletary in number 1, at least in my opinion. You do.
Oh, I definitely agree with you. I mean, when you're talking about him with Baylor, as a sophomore, he set a record for the school with 232 solo tackles as a sophomore at Baylor. That's and like you say, those eyes, they were just, every time he had a Chicago Bears game on, it seemed like they would focus inside his helmet. And you see those eyes shifting back and forth, and you knew he was going after something. He had the prey he was stalking,
It was great where he says hitting people has always been his style. So he hit a lot of people. And did you ever see the NFL film where they focus on him and he just clobbered somebody on the field, and he gets up, he goes, "Now that's my kind of party." And I mean, just that little line like that. And he was just an incredible linebacker.
There's still, I think it's the Moving the Chain show on Sirius XM. They use that, "Now that's my kind of party" line to start off every show. It's part of their intro.
I'm going to have to pay attention to that.
Yeah. He's definitely a character. And I definitely agree with you. He's going to be our first one on the list. No doubt about it. He owns that. Now, which one would you like to talk about next of our Hall of Famers?
Alex.
Okay.
Alex Wojciechowicz.
I think it's Wojciechowicz, I think is how you say it.
Wojciechowicz. Now, there's a rumor that, did you ever remember the old television show Barney Miller?
Yes.
Max Gale's character is Stanley Wojciechowicz.
Right.
There's a rumor. I don't know how true that is. Maybe one of your listeners can lay claim to this. But there's a rumor that somehow, some way, there's some tie-in that they named that character in honor of Alex. So you never know.
Wow, yeah. The nickname was Wojo, the character, right?
Wojo, yes.
Yeah.
Just a little maybe mock trivia, maybe legend. I don't know, but it makes for a good story.
Yeah, it definitely does. That's interesting. I never thought of that.
But Wojciechowicz is one of my favorites. He came from that, even though he played for Detroit for a large amount of years. It was that time in Philadelphia in the later 40s, which is one of my favorite teams. Now, granted, as much as people tease me, I wasn't around at that time. Okay, just from what I've read in books. But that team was amazing with Steve Van Buren running the ball, and Wojciechowicz, he was as hard as a rock, and he was one of Fordham University's 7 blocks of granite, along with Vince Lombardi. He was a rugged 6 foot, 235 pound enforcer. Played for 13 years. He was a hard-hitting, powerful, compact, low center of gravity, and quickness. He had that quickness to blast into defenders. And he also had real surprising defensive speed. For someone at that time, nowadays, the guys of that size, they're running 4.5, 4.40s. Mm-hmm. But, to have speed at that size at that time, it was amazing. That speed allowed him to rush quarterbacks, chase down ball carriers. And he even handled pass coverage with some of the top receivers of the game, at that time. So can you imagine someone that's almost like a Mike Singletary, like a fire plug, built like that, going after incredible receivers? Like, you had Don Hudson, you had Tom Fears, just to name two of the all-time greats. Crazy Legs Hirsch.
Yeah, can you imagine the defensive coordinators scheming that? They'd have the offense all off balance, having him go out and cover the best receiver.
And Detroit basically got rid of him for nothing. And Earl Greasy Neal, the head coach of the Eagles, picked him up off the scrap heap. And he became a real comedian with the team and all, too. So he was kind of a complete player. On the field, he was, a wild man. And off the field, he was quite a comedian. So he was always one of my favorites.
Yeah, and he's extremely well respected by history of football. I mean, he was the founder and the first president of the NFL Alumni Association, and he's also the third player in history to receive the Order of the Leather Helmet, which is a prestigious salute for individuals that have made significant contributions to the game of professional football. So that's quite an honor there too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think Alex is on our list. If that's okay with you, he'll take our second spot if that's all right.
I won't have a problem with Alex. No, not at all.
Yeah, when you get the Order of the Leather Helmet, only 3 in history. That's pretty big deal there.
Yes.
All right. What direction would you like to go to next?
I'd like to go to Len Ford next.
Okay.
If possible.
Sure.
I mean, Len Ford was again one of my favorites. When he came out of the AAFC with the LA Dons, he was a great receiver. A lot of people forget about it. He was a devastating defensive lineman, but he was a great receiver also for the Dons until, he came to Paul Brown's Cleveland Browns, and he was just devastating. He changed the whole defensive alignments at the time. And they said because of his abilities on the line that Cleveland, in effect, actually created the first 4-3 defense. And that allowed Ford to line up close to the ball handling action, and he had a better shot at enemy quarterbacks. He had big grasp. I mean, he was just a powerful guy, and just revolutionized that position at that time.
Yeah. But Paul Brown, he could really notice talent, couldn't he? I mean, when the AAFC disbands, the Dons disband because they weren't one of the 3 taken over by the NFL. And, Paul Brown, he just scooped up guys like that and really made better stars than they probably were before with their old teams. And they were all
absolutely.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
Real good judge of talent, Paul Brown was, and he really knew how to fit people into his schemes.
He wasn't probably the most congenial man as far as to his players, but they loved the guy. Of course, because he was a winner. the minute he started to lose a little bit, then all of a sudden that luster faded, and Blanton Collier took over after that.
Right. But going back to Ford, I mean, he had that bright moment in 1954 NFL championship game against the Lions. He picked off 2 passes as the Browns went on a 56-10 rout of the Lions on that game.
After losing to them twice.
Yeah. So don't tell Arnie Chapman that, because that'll break his heart, even though he wasn't alive then, but still break his heart.
Oh, no, I won't. I promise. Now that I know that, I can maybe use that as leverage on him. Yeah.
You write that down. If you need to get anything over Arnie, you can tell him that.
Already have it down.
All right. I have no problem at all, even though only 2 seasons wearing the number 50, but I think Glenn Ford was just that dominant of a player and that versatile that I think he ought to be on our list also.
Absolutely.
Okay. So there we have 3 spots filled already. See, this is a piece of cake. See?
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy. I thought that this was going to be hard.
Oh, just wait. We'll get there.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. How about we go to Ken Strong next, if that's okay
Love
with
it.
you?
What a complete ball player. And, I mean, kicking, running. I mean, he did it all at that time. Did especially that 1934 championship game, the sneaker ball or the sneaker game, when they went up against this incredible force, the Chicago Bears. They put on those sneakers, and the Bears had this cleats on, and they were slipping and sliding everywhere. And Ken Strong was another one of my favorites. He was they said he was probably the best or the greatest all-around player of all time, and that came from quite a few people, that saw him play.
Now, it's kind of interesting. What we do on Pigskin Dispatch, we celebrate the birthdays of Hall of Famers on every day of the year. So we have a daily podcast on that. But it's interesting that both Ken Strong and another one of our Hall of Famers that were number 50, Steve Owen, who I believe, I don't know if he coached Ken Strong or not, but
yes, he did.
They both shared the same birthday of April 21st. Not the same year, but the same birthday. About 8 years apart. But I found that kind of interesting tonight to go into that. But yeah, Ken Strong, definitely a well-rounded player. And like you said, many have said he may be the best NFL player ever. And you're talking, that's some great players, like Red Grange and Jim Thorpe, and there's people saying that he might be better than them. But I don't know. I'll have to take their word for it. I've never saw any of them got a chance to play, but in my lifetime. But
they said,
who knows?
They said he was. They said that there was really nothing that he could not do athletically, and he was a compact, 5'11", 210 pounds, but he had sprinter speed. And when you brought up Red Grange, he had the elusiveness of Red Grange, and Ernie Nevers. He was as tough as Ernie Nevers, and he was just an outstanding passer, punter, place kicker, defensive back. You know who he reminds me a lot of a few years after that, about a decade later, was Bob Waterfield. I know he's not number 50, but I'm going to give a shout out to Bob Waterfield because he was married to Jane Russell, that famous movie star. So, you couldn't be all that bad.
Anytime you can get Jane Russell in the conversation, that's we got to make the stretch and get there.
Kudos to him just for that. But
right.
No, I mean, I always thought that Bob Waterfield was probably one of the greatest complete players. And then I started to read about Ken Strong, and I came away even more impressed with Ken Strong, where he was the Bob Waterfield of his time.
Yeah, and the first 4 seasons, I just like saying his name, the Staten Island Stapletons,
yes,
1929 through 1932, before he went to the Giants. And he seems to have stayed right around New York City his whole time, with Staten Island and New York Giants, NYU, grew up in West Haven, Connecticut, which is only like an hour by train out of the big city. So he stayed pretty much at home his whole football career, it looks like.
Yes.
So,
and he did a fantastic job where they said that for almost 30 years, his 17-point performance stood as an NFL title game record. 17 points, I believe it was 30-13. I believe that was the score. So, he scored 17 of those 30 points on a frigid field and against
the ice
against a tough football team.
Right.
And the Bears at that time were supposed to be invincible. And the Giants proved them wrong.
Yeah, I'm sure Mr. Hallis wasn't a real happy camper at the end of that game. Well, I think Ken Strong, you've made a convincing case. I think he is definitely going to be on our list with the fourth spot taken up, especially 15 seasons wearing that number 50. I believe he's our highest player, most longevity in the number 50, if I'm thinking right. I think I am.
I believe so.
Okay, so we have 4 names on our list. We're 4 for 4. We're batting 1,000 here so far. Getting them on our list. But now we get into our last 2 Hall of Famers, and they wore the jersey for 1 season. So that may play into this a little bit, but we can always put players on standby and come back to them later. But let's take a look at it. I know you've got to be chomping at the bit to talk about one of your Oakland Raiders here.
Yes, 00. Now if you look at the 1951 Fleer football card, number 197, you can see Jim Otto with the number 50 on him. Okay, that card would have to be a classic card right now, because he only wore that for just a few games in 1961 before he switched over into the 00. And it was just basically a promotional aspect for the AFL at that time. The story goes that Frank Hinnick, the equipment manager, he came up to Jim Otto with an idea. Now, Otto was wearing number 50 in 1960 and for a few games in 61. And he wanted to know if he could switch from 50 to 0. And he said that the quarterback of the Washington Redskins, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, Johnny Oslowski, he was wearing the 0. He was wearing number 0 to match his nickname of Johnny O. So they thought that would be kind of a cool idea. So he mentioned the idea to Jim Otto. And then all of a sudden he said, wait a minute, you have 2 O's in your name. So they went with the 00, just like, Otto, O-T-T-O. Mm-hmm. And he loved the idea. He approached the Raiders. They said fine, but they had to go through Joe Foss, the AFL commissioner. And the league was looking for any way to promote itself at that time, second year in. And Joe Foss went for the idea. And after 2 games in 1961, the legend was born with the 00. So, I mean, Jim Otto, you could just go on and on and on and talk about the greatness that he had. I mean, he was just an amazing, amazing force of nature. I mean, they call him Mr. Raider, simply because, you have to realize it's a heck of a compliment when you're considering all the tough, wild guys that played for that organization. And he stands out as Mr. Raider. He led by example, hard work, dedication, hard-nosed ball player. He was a charter member of the AFL. And the amazing thing is he came into the Raiders as a free agent. He only weighed 205 pounds as a center out of the University of Miami. And, he just showed up there and he quickly showed determination and through weightlifting, and he beefed himself up to 250 pounds and just began overwhelming opponents. And for, 15-year stretch, he started all 230 games in his team's regular season games and 13 postseason games, 12 Pro Bowls. And he did this all during all these injuries. And I mean, the injuries that he had are absolutely, it would probably knock a mortal man down, and he would play with all these injuries and just, his knees, his shoulders, he probably has more replacements. I know they amputated his one leg because of all the surgeries to it. But yet I heard this, and I heard that he actually has the Raiders shield on his artificial leg. So
really? Wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that I was sitting there looking at that earlier. Just every game that the existence of the AFL that the Raiders were in, he started every one of those games. That's unbelievable. Just that fact. Oh, yeah. And then you spend 4 or 5 years in the NFL and start every game you played in the NFL too. That's incredible, especially at the position of center. That's a tough feat to do. I don't know if that's ever been repeated by a center.
No, I don't think so. When you stop and you look at the Raiders at that time, for the first 25 years of that organization, first 26 years actually, they only had 2 centers, Jim Otto and one of the men I'm going to be talking about in a little bit, Double D, Dave Dalby. But I'll let you lead into that one.
Okay. All right. Well, we talked quite a bit about Jim Otto because we started off with the zeros and double zeros. And of course he was probably about 2/3 of the show, because there was only like three people that we could really talk about with the zeros and double zeros that were significant. Right. And he definitely an impressive player. But the one thing I have a problem with is only the 1 year in number 50. Does that make him one of the greatest number 50s? It may, but having only one season, at being that first season, I'm not totally convinced. So I may have to just put a check mark by him, unless you've got a more compelling case, or until we get through some of these other players. I'd hate to.
We could put an asterisk next to him. What do you say?
Okay, we'll put an asterisk and we'll come back to him if that's okay with you.
No, that's fine with me.
Okay. And I guess the other players sort of in that same category who probably got into the Hall of Fame because of his coaching, not because of his players playing, I don't think, is Steve Owen, who we mentioned a little bit earlier. And I don't know if you have anything on Steve.
He was a tough, hard-nosed lineman, and but teaching was his, coaching football was his forte. And but he was a hard-hitting guy. He was a two-way tackle. And he played against George Halas, played against Jim Thorpe. I mean, just to sit down and have a drink with this guy would be interesting to hear what he had to say about Jim Thorpe and George Halas.
I think he even played with Jim Thorpe. He played on the Cleveland Bulldogs, or maybe Thorpe was on Cleveland's Bulldogs.
Oh, no, he wasn't. He was on the Canton Bulldogs.
Yeah, but in 1926, the Giants bought the rights to him for $500, which was a pretty good sum back then. Mm-hmm. And from the Cleveland Bulldogs. And he was the head coach of the Giants for 24 seasons and never signed a contract. Just a handshake. Just a handshake with the Mars. Unbelievable. You never hear of that, even in the old days. That's
no, not at all. And just he was innovative, and as they said, he was a powerful actually player on the field, but his real strength was in coaching defense, where he came up with the umbrella defense. And it was the secondary was set up to look like a umbrella with four defensive backs representing, the umbrella spokes, so to say, to stop the Cleveland Browns passing attack. Dante Lavelli, Max Speedy, and Otto Graham throwing the ball. And they beat him twice in 1950 and forced a playoff game. So, he had to do something right. He won a couple NFL championships, and he's in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
But as a coach.
And he was one of the first that implemented the 2 platoon system of personnel with specialists for offense and defense too. So very, very wise, and really paid attention to the rules, and tried to put his team in the best position to have advantages in that those rules. So
when you really stop and you think, I'm going a little bit, unfortunately, off track, but when you really stop and you think about it, when he came up with that 2 platoon system, that really opened up the offensive game. And then you started to think about the Rams in the later 40s and early 50s, when they just exploded with offensive firepower, which just rolled into today's game now. So, you can even trace it back to Steve Owen, and setting up that 2 platoon system, which basically started the way that the game is played today. If that makes any sense, what I just said.
Yeah, no, most definitely it does. That I totally agree with that. I'm going to have to pause this for 1 second here. So that's our Hall of Famers. I think Steve Owen's probably another one that we'll put maybe come back to. He doesn't have as strong of a case as Jim Otto does, I don't think, for being a player. But we'll put a little asterisk by him, come back to him. But now I guess it's time to go into these other 6 spots with also consideration of Jim Otto, but looking at some of the players that aren't in the Pro Football Hall of Fame yet. And who would you like to talk about as those players?
I'd love to go back to the Raiders.
Okay.
And I'd like to leave double zero and go to double D, Dave Dalby.
Okay.
He replacing a legend such as Jim Otto couldn't have been an easy task. But after doing so, Dalby just went on to make his mentor proud. He was drafted in 1972 by the Raiders in the 4th round. He learned the center position from one of the game's greatest all-time players in Jim Otto. And after 3 seasons of apprenticeship under Otto, he was ready to take the reins. And beginning with the 75 regular season opener, he never relinquished his starting job until giving away to Don Mosbar 2 games into the 1985 season. So you look and you go, for 25 years, the Raiders only had 2 centers. And it's absolutely amazing. And he was also part of one of the greatest offensive lines in history, played alongside Hall of Famers Gene Upshaw, Art Shell, Dave Casper at tight end. It made Ken Stabler very, very safe. Dalby was a tremendous center and snapper on extra points and field goals. And over his 14 seasons, he had 205 consecutive game appearances as a member of the Raiders, and it ranked him near the top in team history in those categories. And he was also the starting center in 3 Super Bowls in 76, 80, and 83, and served as offensive captain from 82 to 84. So he should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I seriously would love to campaign for him. And I believe that the more Raiders that are getting in there now, especially with Coach Flores getting in there, I hope that it'll open up the door to Dave Dalby, because he really does deserve to be in there with Jim Otto.
I think you definitely make a real compelling case for him. I didn't realize that. From 1960 to 1985, the center position was only handled by 2 men. For the Raiders. That's unbelievable.
Yes. Could you imagine coming to the tryout camp as a center?
Yeah. Fat chance you're going to get any playing time, kid.
Exactly.
Wow. That is really impressive. Now, not to put you on the spot or anything, but as in the PFRA, do we have him in the Hall of the Very Good?
You know what? I don't know. I don't know if I saw that. I believe he is, though.
Okay,
I believe he is in the Hall of Very
sounds like
Good.
he is. I don't have that verified, but his name sounds familiar enough that he may be.
I believe I did see that. I can't verify it for a fact right now. I don't have that info in front of me.
Usually lately, that's been sort of the stepping stone for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They've,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So maybe that'll be a good sign if he is. So
let's hope. He was up for it in 2000, but then after that, didn't hear anything about him.
Well, there's a lot of rumblings going on. I know in the back alleyways of football that they're going to try to open up some more for some seniors getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in the coming year. So maybe that'll be an opportunity for folks like Dave Dalby to get in.
I so hope so. Because, again, I don't want to go off course there, but there's so many Raiders that belong in the Hall of Fame that aren't because of the color of their uniforms. The silver and black are not too well beloved, so to say. And I think that has a lot to do with keeping guys like Dave Dalby out. And hopefully someday he'll be in there with many of the other Raiders.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, as long as you're on the subject, because having a Raiders fan on, I don't get that opportunity all the time. Now, that they almost sort of embrace that mystique of being sort of everybody's bad guy, and I don't know if I would say bad guy, but they always wanted to be that sort of rogue character in the league. And they played hard, and they hit hard, and they played well, but they just always sort of had that moxie about them, And
the swagger, yes.
The swagger. That's the word I'm looking for. So,
but great is great, and you can't bypass people because of the way that the reputation that the team had. And I mean, good, great, however you want to say it, it speaks for itself. The statistics and all, and they should be in there. Just to go off a little bit, there was an old movie star named John Barrymore, and he was just like that. He was a rogue, he was a misfit, everything like that. He was an incredible actor, and he always kind of scoffed at the Academy Awards and all. But deep down inside, he wanted to win one so bad. Because he just wanted to, show that, he wouldn't embarrass himself or embarrass the Academy. And I believe that that's the way that, again, I went a little bit off track there, but that's how I feel about the Raiders, where they might scoff and say, oh, we don't need the Hall of Fame and all, but they do need the Hall of Fame. I mean, they should be put in that. They should be put among their peers.
I agree, but I don't think we're going off track at all, because we're talking about football history, and that's what we're here to talk about. But I I have sort of a theory on the whole thing with the Raiders, and I think it stems from Al Davis, who owned the Raiders for many years. I think was 2 or 3 years into this when he took over ownership of them, and controlling interest anyway. And he sort of had a battle going on with Pete Rozelle, who was the commissioner for decades during that time. And they had a couple run-ins, both first of all, when the AFL against the NFL, they were both the heads of their organization, and they battled there. And then in the 1980 when the Raiders wanted to move to LA, they went to court, and Rozelle and Davis again head to head, in the press at each other. And I wonder if maybe that had some of the mystique of the Raiders, because Rozelle, sort of trying to put on the white hat and, saying, Al Davis is the bad guy. I just wonder a little bit of that too.
Oh yeah. It's always saying, the guy with the white hat rides off into the sunset as the hero, but it was the guys that wear black that rode off into the sunset as heroes, and that had to just tear Pete Rozelle up. If you ever have a chance to ever see, which I'm sure that you did, the highlights from Super Bowl 15 in New Orleans when the Raiders came out of nowhere, wild card team, and they beat the Philadelphia Eagles in that game. Mm-hmm. And Pete Rozelle had to go into that locker room and give that trophy to Al Davis. That had to be the longest few moments of his life. And then a few years later, when they did represent the city of Los Angeles, and then he had to give him another trophy. And Al Davis was always the person, I take what I want when I want. And that was his theory with the Raiders. That was his theory in life. And, it's like, I want to move to Los Angeles. Well, we'll talk about it. No, you don't understand. We're moving to Los Angeles. And they did. And they wound up still being winners. And absolutely incredible story. And I could just go on and on. I don't want to go off track on this, but maybe I could come back and we could talk about the Raiders for about 5 hours. What do you say?
Well, I'm a Steelers fan, so there's one game I definitely want to talk about, but we'll get into that some other time.
Never happened.
You're well, that's
that hurts,
different.
Darren. That hurts.
Totally different show. Totally different show.
That's a different show. I promise I'll come back.
Well, you really made a compelling case for Dalby. I'm leaning towards, I think maybe he ought to be put in now as our fifth spot. That's Absolutely. Impressive. Okay.
Absolutely.
I didn't think I'd have an argument from you.
Oh, no. Put Double D right on the doorstep with the Hall of Famers, because he'll cross that threshold one day.
Okay. I think he will. Now I'm upset with myself. I'm putting Jim Otto on hold and taking Dalby in, but it's only because of that 1 year with the wearing the jersey number 50.
Right.
That's my only reservation there. But
I understand.
I could change my mind here, as we go through these guys. All right.
He'll always be number one in my heart.
There you go. Okay. Who do you want to talk about next?
I was always a fan of the Vince Lombardi Packers and the Los Angeles Rams in the later 60s. Probably the greatest team that never won anything as far as a Super Bowl, a league championship. And Ken Iman was the center for you. Played a backup to Jim Ringo in Green Bay. And Jim Ringo was a Hall of Famer. So, wouldn't be bad sitting behind him. And he wound up, he played in 3 NFL championship games with the Packers from 60 to 62. He won 2 of them. And then he wound up going to the Los Angeles Rams. Had a great career there. And he started 140 straight games with the Rams from 65 to 74. And he was voted the team MVP in 1972, which a center being the team MVP, that speaks for itself right there. So I would say you have to put him up on that list.
Yeah, especially if you got the team MVP in his 12th season too. That's impressive.
Right.
They're declining, especially on the offensive line.
Mm-hmm. And that Rams team was that line that he anchored, and with Tom Mack on there, and with just the receivers that they had, the backs, Roman Gabriel at quarterback, great defense. And it just fascinates me. I mean, they happen to just run into teams like the Green Bay Packers, the Baltimore Colts, and Minnesota Vikings around that time that just, stomped them out of the playoffs. But again, there's an old, cliche. Well, if it wasn't for so-and-so, if it wasn't for this, I'd be world champion. And you can say that about the Rams at that time. Without those teams, they would have steamrolled over anybody. I truly believe that.
Okay, so we want to give him our sixth selection on our top 10 list?
I would love that.
Okay.
I would love that.
I have no problem at all with that. I had him earmarked anyway, so he's one.
Okay, good.
Now, who was the other one you want to talk about? D.D. Lewis? Is that?
D.D. Lewis. We can do some D.D. Lewis. Sure.
Okay. I thought that's where you're going to next. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Okay.
He was a phenomenal college player. And then he was, played in 2 Super Bowls, won 2 Super Bowls with the Dallas Cowboys, was a leader for Tom Landry. Just as a rookie in training camp, he was first he was moved over to center. He's moved over to center, and then they moved him to outside linebacker. And then he just became the linebacker and just phenomenal talent. So you'd have to put him on there.
You think you put him on the list, or you think maybe put a check mark by him?
He started 135 games for the Cowboys.
Okay.
Out of 186 played. So I'd have to say so. Okay. Again, playing for Tom Landry, and being a star like that. Yeah, let's put him on the list. Maybe
right, not. 14 seasons. So yeah. Okay. He's got our 7th spot then. All right. What direction would you like to go to next?
How about Mike Vrabel?
Okay.
Mike Vrabel, he started 140 games, 57 sacks, 11 interceptions. Just great power, great powerful guy, and became one heck of a coach. Played under Bill Belichick, which can probably be a little bit trying at times, I think. But he was a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He was a first-team All-Pro in 2007 when the Patriots did go undefeated in the regular season all the way up until the Super Bowl. And he made the Pro Bowl that year. And when the New England Patriots were selecting their 50th anniversary team, there was no question that he wasn't going to be on that. He made Sports Illustrated's All-Decade team. And he had 740 tackles, 57 sacks. Let's put him on the list.
Okay, I agree. He's one that it's like that big fish that got away. The Steelers drafted him and had him for 4 years on their roster and didn't really utilize him to what he was good at. And but he went with Belichick and just all of a sudden really blossomed into an outstanding player.
Yeah, Belichick was incredible. It still is, and I still think Bill Belichick will be back. But yeah, he just had a great. He to me, he runs that team like a college program, a couple years in, a couple years out, you're in, and he shuffles these players back in. And sometimes you look like, who the heck are these guys? And like you said, Vrabel kind of just was hanging around Pittsburgh, and then all of a sudden he blossomed with the New England Patriots and wound up being a legend there.
Yeah, he loves to take players that are cast off from other teams and recycles them into something special. That's for sure. He's done it more than once. Okay, so we have Mike Vrabel as our 8th player on our top 10 list. So we have 2 spots left. So got to be real selective here. Make sure we don't miss anybody. What player would you like to talk about next?
I'm thinking, how about if we go to, how about Larry Gordon?
Okay.
Miami Dolphins.
Sure.
He won, the Dolphins have an award there called the Tommy Fitzgerald Award, which is given to the Dolphins' outstanding rookie in training camp. He won that in 1976, and he became an outstanding linebacker. 1978, he intercepted 3 passes in one game, unfortunately against the Raiders, and it clinched a wild card berth. And he was just a tough tackler. He was a very, very, as they said, swift predator to opposing ball players, and he was a phenomenal hitter. And he had great acceleration for blitzing, agility for pass coverage as a complete linebacker. So I would love to put him on there. Unfortunately, his life was snuffed out early when he had a heart attack while jogging in the desert right before the 1983 football season. And he passed away at the age of 28.
Oh, yeah, that's way too young. Way too young. Yeah, very, very good player. I remember him playing. And he was definitely a force to be reckoned with when you played the Dolphins. Boy, I don't know if I want to put him on yet, though, because there's still some guys on there that I'm not dismissing them, but there's still some guys on there I think we got to talk about here. Got a name like Justin Houston. Where does he fall in this whole thing? He's still, I'm not sure if he's still playing or not. I think he is. He played last year with Indianapolis, and I think he might be a free agent right now. But, when you look at what Justin Houston's done, he has 4 Pro Bowls, 1 time as an All-Pro. He's got 97 and a half sacks in his career so far, forced fumbles 17 in his career. He led the NFL in 2014 in sacks with 22. That's some impressive numbers here to talk about.
Yeah, we could put him on there. I'm going to follow your lead on that one. I would say
I hate to see a guy with 97 and a half sacks and still going, not be on the greatest of all time list for the 50s. I think he definitely deserves to be on. And he's wore the jersey for 11 seasons, so it's sort of hits all the criteria there.
Let's put him up on there.
Okay, so he's our 9th spot on there. And is there anybody else that you'd like to talk about?
I would say maybe Jeff Seaman.
Okay.
He's part of that purple people eater defense in Minnesota. We could debate him if you want.
Okay.
He was a 4-time Pro Bowler, and he was one of the one of the 50 all-time greatest Minnesota Vikings. And again, he played on some great defenses. What do you think about him?
Definitely. I've taken a good look at him. But okay, so there's one last spot left. So, I think he's definitely worthy of consideration. But you still got Otto hanging out there. You really talked up Larry Gordon quite a bit.
Yes.
And I don't know if you have anybody else that you want to talk about. I didn't know if you
Mike Pyle from the old Chicago Bears. He was a offensive team captain in 1963 when they won the championship. And he was a center, went to Yale. But I don't know if that would constitute him being one of the all-time greatest. But I just kind of wanted to bring him up because the 63 Bears are one of my favorite teams also. I'm another Chicago Bears fan per se, but that 63 team I always was fascinated with. George Allen was a defensive coordinator. Of course, George Halas was the head coach. And Mike Pyle was the captain of that team. So I just kind of threw him on there like that.
Yeah,
maybe I was thinking with the heart.
Right. Yeah. He's definitely a great player, but there's other players I'm saying, I don't even think they'll make the list. You have guys like, Sean Lee, who, probably if he didn't have so many confounded injuries that interrupted his career, he could probably have been a real beast on it. He was a beast when he was on the field, and players, like Larry Foote and AJ Hawk, great players that probably don't even get a sniff at what these other gentlemen have done, but definitely want to mention them.
Hey, Ricky Ellison.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one man on this list that I saw, Jake Cupp. And I bring his name up, not because of, what he did as a player and all. Granted, he did things I could only dream of, but he was the very first football card when I was 10 years old. He was the very first football card that I pulled out of a pack of Topps bubblegum cards with that stiff, hard piece of bubblegum. And he was the very first player. And all these years later, that stuck in my head. So when I saw his name on this list, I said, I have to give Jake Cupp props on that because he was the very first card I ever pulled out. Not Joe Namath, not Johnny Unitas, boom, Jake Cupp. So
I think I had a few of his cards too. Yeah, one of my friends once said, because we collected Topps together and we trade them all the time. He said, Topps, it's the only place where sometimes the cards taste better than the gum. So I said, I don't know if I ever tasted the card, but I believe you.
This is going to sound weird, but people that know me know I'm weird anyway. So I might as well say this: that you wouldn't chew the gum because it was terrible, but you'd just smell that card, and it just smelled great. And like you said, I never ate the cards, but but it's at least I'm not going to admit to it. But but they just smelled so good, and the bubblegum smell in there was awesome. And it seemed to linger for a while on there too. So that always made it fun. But yeah, I tip my hat to Mr. Cupp, very first card I ever pulled out. So, I had to give him props.
Well, I don't know how you can remember the very first one you pulled out. Wow, that's good.
I remember
great
stupid.
memory.
I remember stupid things like that.
That's a good memory.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Well, do we need to go into some deliberation here? Choose who our 10th player should be.
Sure. Let's do that.
So I think basically I have Larry Gordon. We said we wanted to come back and talk about Mike Pyle, Jeff Seaman, Steve Owen. I don't think he's under consideration, but Jim Otto is. So we really have a three horse race here for that one spot.
As much as I would want to say Jim Otto, I would have to say that you probably can't put Jim Otto on that list for number 50. Again, it's killing me to say that, but he really only played, let's say, 14 games, and then in the first season, and just 3 games in the 61 season. So that's only 17 games that he used it, and his whole claim to fame was the 00. So I would have to take Jim Otto off that list on number 50s.
Yeah, definitely. When I think of Jim Otto, I think of the double zeros. So exactly. I don't think of 50. So I think that's being a football purist. I think that we are. I think we got to maybe put the other guys in a little bit higher consideration, because Jeff Seaman wore the jersey 50 for 11 seasons, and Mike Pyle wore it for 9 seasons. So almost a decade between each of them wearing number 50. Weighs heavy here. I'm leaning probably a little bit towards Jeff Seaman, but I don't know where your feelings are.
Yes, myself also.
Okay, so we'll put him as our 10th spot here. And just to review real quick here, in no particular order, we have Justin Houston, Mike Vrabel, Jeff Seaman, D.D. Lewis, Dave Dalby, Ken Iman, Ken Strong, Len Ford, Alex Wojciechowicz, and Mike Singletary is our top 10. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody there. I think that's 10. So yeah, great job. That's always a tough thing when you get to the end there, those last spot.
Right. Yeah, the first couple are very easy. Mike Singletary, that just rolled right off, but as you said, right. There's a little stutter steps every now and then toward the end.
Yeah, and there was even some good Steeler linebackers in there too. And you had the David Littles and Earl Holmes, and but they just didn't have the careers that these other guys had, and they weren't one of the top Steeler linebackers ever either. So, but good players. All right. Well, I appreciate you helping me out on that. That's a tough job, and number 50 is a big number. But you have doing a lot of writing. Are you have anything currently that's coming out or just out, or something you're working on you want to talk about?
Right now, I have a book at the publisher right now dealing with the early pro football history of Los Angeles. And that'll cover when Red Grange did his barnstorming tours. And he went to Los Angeles, had a huge turnout there. And the pro football was kind of banned from there because USC didn't want to share the Coliseum. They wanted to be the alpha dogs in town. So Los Angeles wound up having an incredible semi-pro league, semi-pro following from the 1930s through 1946, when the Rams finally did, break through and created Manifest Destiny for the NFL. And that book will highlight from the 1920s until the culmination of when the Rams finally put it all together and won the 1951 NFL championship. And that was a lot of fun to work on, and that's at the publisher right now. So hopefully the editing is going well and they like what they see.
Now, do you have a solid title for that we can look for? Or is that
right now? I just have when Pro Football went Hollywood, but I'm sure they might change that title. But for right now, that's what it is. When I find out anything, I would love to let you know.
Yeah, let us know, and we'll mention on the podcast. We'll put it up on pigskindispatch.com and make sure everybody knows about that. So we'll look for that book. And how about anything else? What's your future lie?
Well, right now I'm working also on a book for a publisher called Bear Manor, and great owner Ben Olmart, and he's allowing me to do a book on the classic drive-in movies from like the 1950s to the early 1980s, when television first started to take away the theater going public, they kind of geared stuff toward teenagers. So the drive-ins were a great place for teenagers to go for many reasons. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, I took it all the way to like after 1982 when the VCRs took over, kind of took care of the drive-ins. But in between 1956 and 82, there were some great drive-in movies. And to me, they're classics. I love that type of cinema. A lot of people don't ask me about movie choices because they're afraid that I'm going to give them some advice. But those movies are just incredible, and they still have an incredible following. So I'm very, very lucky to have the opportunity to do a book on that. I'm also doing some books under my own label, dealing with Marilyn Monroe and some more Hollywood history, and also a project called the Championship Diary series. And I'm doing one on the 1983 Raiders, which follows the Raiders from the first day of training camp all the way through their Super Bowl victory, and each day what went on during that season. So that's been a lot of fun so far also.
Wow, you're a busy guy.
I try to be.
And quite a diverse thing. Yeah, the drive-ins ones, that sounds really interesting. I had the opportunity when I was probably about 12 years old. I stayed with some family down in Dayton, Ohio, which is probably about 5-6 hours from where I lived. And I got to spend a couple of weeks down there, and that family owned a drive-in theater down in Dayton. So I got to go every night and see the behind the scenes. It's pretty a complicated thing from what I remember. You had to watch for like the little spots up in the corner of the movie to come out. That's when you had to start the next film roll, and you had to time it just right. So it's things I never imagined, but I always saw those little, like spots. I thought, oh boy, the film, had a problem with it. They dump some water on it or something, but those were actually signals for the movie projector people to start the next film going, because they had like 3 or 4 rolls to go. So it's pretty interesting. So it's just a whole exciting experience. I mean, it was just just to drive in and pull up and put the speaker on the car and then drive away with the speaker still hooked up to the car. And you had to explain to your father why the car was scratched up. But no, it's just an exciting time in a lot of the movies. Whether they're dealing with the monster movies or the beach movies. The name of the book is called Beasts, Bedlam, and Babes, where it covers the beasts from the horror flicks, and then the Bedlam, the old biker movies from the 60s. And then it just goes on to the, a lot of the pom-pom girls and the cheerleading movies and all the stuff that would cover the babe aspect of it. So it's been a lot of fun. And I'm adding more of a humorous look at these movies, because as much as I love them and stuff, come on, let's face it, you can't take them too serious. You can't be too pompous to think, that you can come up with an educated review of it. You have to have some fun with it. And I'm having the time of my life writing that one. Oh God, the title sounds fun. That sounds very intriguing. Who wouldn't be interested in that? Those are, usually I think the 3 B's, beer, bacon, and barbecue, but that's your 3 B's are pretty good too.
I figured, the B movie thing, you kind of had to stick with the B theme,
Right. Well, hey, I appreciate Rich joining us today and sharing your football history knowledge with us, helping us with those number 50s, and hope to have you on again soon. Either come on, talk about the Raiders, or maybe we can get you on another number here. But very interesting, and we appreciate you coming on today.
Darren, I would love it. Anytime. I had a great time talking to you, and whether you want to talk about the Raiders, and we'll talk about that game that, I don't want to talk about, but I will. The 72 game. But what was that? The Immaculate something? It kind of escapes my memory. I can remember Jake Cup being pulled out of my first pack of bubblegum cards, but I kind of have a tendency to forget that Immaculate something.
I think that was Phil Vilbiano and John Madden's favorite game they were ever part of, I think they said. Something to that effect. Jack Tatum. Yeah, Jack Tatum too. All right, my friend, I thank you for your time today, and hope to hear you real soon. And everybody check out his books. They sound real intriguing, and he's got quite a variety of football books to pick from, and some other topics too. So make sure you check those out, and I'll make sure you give me some of those things in the show notes. I'll put some links into your books, and we'll try to get some people connected to them.
Sounds great, Darren. And again, like I said, I had a time of my life talking with you, and love to be on your show anytime.
Okay.
Let's do it again.
All right. Thank you.
And just to coin the Raiders, just win, baby. I had to get that in there.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, PigskinDispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. PigskinDispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings your sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique items with a retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row One catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row One Pictorium Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.